Walter Jeworski is a sound engineer with perfect pitch. Let's welcome Walter.
Thank you so much. Hi everybody, how's everybody doing? Yeah, good. I've gone a bit overboard on my setup here. You'll see why, but my goal today is to leave you, when you walk out of this place, I want you to perceive music differently than you ever have before. I want to show you the insides of the process and how a song is made and all the different tracks. I'll actually show a little preview here. So if you came in early and you saw what this was, that's what we're looking at. So this is something called Pro Tools. This is where one of the places where music is made, and I'm gonna play this song for you. But first I'm just gonna tell you a bit about myself and how I got to this step. So I started playing piano when I was 4 years old, and what happened was my brother was taking lessons, and I came with my mom to his lesson at the end. I was listening to him play Hot Cross Buns. That was one of the first pieces of music. If anybody here did piano back in the day, when you were young, Hot Cross Buns might have been where you started, or Jingle Bells. So when my brother was done, I walked up to the piano, and I'd never played a piano before, but I'd been listening, and I started to play Hot Cross Buns. And the piano teacher was like, oh, that's never happened before. And my mom was like, oh, okay, we should probably put him in piano lessons. So that's how that kind of got on that role. And then from there, I studied classical music for most of my life, up until I was 20 years old. And a big part of that was I had two very, very good mentors growing up who taught me piano. And my mom especially was one of the people who really disciplined me in music. She would sit down beside me and count the notes for me. She would point with a stick. And I'm half Chinese. My mom was born and raised in Hong Kong, and my dad's from Poland. And immigrant parents, they can get a little intense. So if I messed up on a note, my mom wouldn't be shy to hit me with a spatula on the fingers. So I learned how to not make any mistakes, and that really carried with me for the rest of my life. So I really try to keep things very perfect, but I also know that things can't always be perfect, and that's what I'm going to talk about with this as well. I'll come back to that point. So when I was 18, I auditioned for Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I got in, and I was so excited. And Berklee College of Music is it's one of the best music schools in the world for contemporary music. So I went there and I studied this stuff here, which is music production engineering. So after my 4-year degree, I moved to New York City, which was my big dream at the time, and I got a job in a recording studio there. And has anybody here been to New York? Yeah, we got some people, awesome. So in Times Square, do you guys know that Smarty store that's 3 stories high? Okay, so MSR Studios is where I worked, and it was across the street, and it was a golden door, and it had no sign because they didn't want paparazzi camping outside. So my first day, I showed up to my job interview 2 hours early, and I just stood outside this door, and I didn't know if it was the place, so I was just like, I was going off faith. So I hit the little button, and they have a little camera that kind of like moves around. It was like a Tim Burton movie, just like staring at me. And then they're like, hello, what are you here for? And I said, I'm here for my interview. I went up, I got the job, and then I came back the next week. I picked up all my bags, moved to New York by myself, which was so scary. But I grew from it, it was amazing. And I worked in this studio for a little less than a year. And people are probably wondering why, okay, you worked in New York, why are you back here? So yeah, so there's 3 things. One thing, New York is extremely expensive for the ones of you who have gone there before. I was working in the studio, and this was one of 2 studios that paid in New York, and they only paid $8 an hour. And the work was intense. Like we talked, some days were 20 hours, 24-hour days. One of the engineers worked a 32-hour shift. It was insane. So I had seen a level of commitment and a level of exhaustion I didn't know existed. And there were times where I remember kind of the turning point for me. I was sitting in the closet, and I think I was on like my 24th hour, and I just broke down. I started crying, and I was like, I just want to go home. I lived in an apartment in Queens, and I would go home every night. There would be nobody there. You know, I lived with an old lady, and bless her heart, she was amazing, but like, I didn't have anybody to share my experiences with. And I was like, I could just see where my life was going. And I'd seen the other engineers at the time, and they were very lonely as well. And a lot of them weren't very happy doing what they were doing. So New York was too expensive, one. Back to that. And then the second thing is, actually, if you study in the States, if anybody's done this, you get 1 year after you graduate to work in the States. So 2, my visa ran up. And 3 was the biggest reason, was because I mentioned mentors before. I had gone to New York in search of a mentor. I wanted to master this. This is my life purpose right here. And I was looking for somebody to show me the ins and outs. And I did not find that person there. And I knew that I wasn't going to get that there. And I felt that it was time to go home and maybe look for a different way to figure this all out. So I came home, and that was 4 years ago. And I found ways to find mentors online. And I just want to encourage you guys, if there's anything that you want to master in your life, you don't got to move to New York and do it. We have the internet now. You can read books. You can sign up for master classes, whatever it is. And that's where I am now. So I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing here. Just for sake of time, I'm just going to start the song from verse 2. So this is a song called Impulsive Love. And I wrote this after I was done in New York, actually. So you can hear the happy vibes. Oh, that siren works perfectly with this. Should have put one in. I do kind of get the idea. Awesome. Thank you. So there's 4 things I want to talk about that go into music, and these are the 4 things that I've discovered since that time. And I consider them the elements that you need to make a really good song, and you can use it in any song. It'll transfer to anything. So the first thing is substance. So you need to know, what's your song about? What are you trying to convey? What emotion are you feeling? And that is the most important thing, because you can have a song that is so beautifully produced, and you can have all the tracks and the best musicians, but if it lacks true emotional meaning, it's never going to hit home. So you can think of all your favorite songs. I'm sure some of them, they might be gut-wrenching breakup songs, or songs where the person was so happy and you can feel it. And you can tell that the artist really cared about what they were singing, and that's super, super important. So when you approach songs, you want to know what your intention is. So when I approached this song, I knew what I wanted to get out of people. I wanted the listener to get a dopamine response. So dopamine means that you get excited. It's when you jump out of a plane or something amazing happens, you win a prize, and you just can't contain yourself. And then there's serotonin, where you're kind of more calm, you're more relaxed, you're more confident. So hip hop music kind of does that. I notice people love hip hop because it's more serotonin. It's very laid back and it makes you confident. Whereas this type of music is more dopamine. It's exciting. So that was one of the points. And then the next thing is creating tension and release is very important in music. So this right here, we're looking at different sections here. So as I move through different sections, I'm trying to create tension and build up to the choruses and then come back down. So you can hear at the end of this chorus, for example, where's my mouse? There we go. And it relaxes. And then this puts you in a different atmosphere. You no longer feel the same emotions that you felt in the chorus. And for those musicians out there, what I did as well was I changed the chord progression. So I'm changing the entire mood of the song through that. And then I'm carrying you on a journey. I'm trying to take you from one place to another and keep you engaged the entire time. So next thing I'll talk about in music is symmetry. So if you'll look up here on my yellow markers, I have the verse, the chorus, verse 2, chorus 2, the bridge, and chorus 3. So something about music is, music you can break it down into mathematics. So what you're hearing out of here is moving air in the room. It's moving air particles in different ways. And the way that a kick drum moves air particles is different than the way a snare drum moves particles. The way a bass moves air is different than the way a piano moves air. So when we're looking at this kind of thing, I'm going to bring up something called an equalizer. So this, okay, this is called an EQ. So what an EQ does is it shows us the entire hearing spectrum that a human being can hear. So a human being can hear from 20 hertz to 20,000 kilohertz. And dogs, the reason a dog whistle works so well that we can't really hear it is it exists in the 30,000 kilohertz. So it's out of the human hearing range, but it drives a dog crazy. So we're kind of limited on what we can hear. So what's kind of nice about that is we can play within those confines. So down here, if you can see where it says 34, I don't know if you guys can see in the back, I'll just kind of talk it through. As I sweep up here, this is where the kick drum exists, the bass, keyboards, and then the vocals exist up here, and drums exist up here, like cymbals and different instruments that are more, what's the word? High-end, is where like cymbals, snares exist in certain areas on the spectrum too. So we're breaking things down into mathematics here. And if you listen to a song, you're just like, this song doesn't hit me emotionally, I guarantee you it's missing something on this curve. There's something here that is not there, and it's not giving you the emotional impact. I'm trying to think of a song that, you guys know like Ed Sheeran, Shape of You? Yeah, so the song, it's very, very simple, and that's what the world is moving towards, is simple trends. So what we're trying to do as producers now is do less with more. Sorry. Do more with less. Thank you. And I'm done. So the idea is that simplicity always wins. To create something amazing is to take so many simple parts to make something complex. So it's not about walking in and ripping a guitar solo while you're trying to sing, and the drummer's just going crazy, and the bass player's going crazy. Every instrument has its place. And if you know what your role is, play it perfectly, and the whole thing will function. And that is symmetry. The next thing I'll talk about is a synergy. So off my last point, everything has to work together. So all these instruments, they can't just simply be there for the sake of it. They all have to play off one another. So if I solo, like the piano, for example. Is that loud enough for you guys? You guys can hear? It sounds super quiet back here. So that is how the song started off. It just started off as that, and then here are the vocals. Then the bass and the drums come in. And see how the song was kind of empty before? It didn't fill up that frequency spectrum. But everything that comes in is playing its part. It's not trying to do too much. So that's always the thing, is like, know your strengths, know what the strengths are for something, and just make that absolutely shine. And the last thing I want to talk about is sonics. So all these little white blips over here, what you're seeing, these are called plugins. So there's our EQ. So I'm actually going to show you guys what a vocal track sounds like before and after. Let's see here.
Your heart is watching me come alive and hold me, tether me, and a smile is shaping up next to me, honestly.
That's something we call a dry vocal. So here I'm going to bring everything in at once and tell you what it's doing. So the first thing I have is an equalizer, and I'm cutting out some of the low end, some of the thump that we don't need in a voice. And this here is an isolated frequency that hurts the ears. So if you ever listen to a song and you're like, oh, why is this hurting my ears? Likely the vocals are too bright in this one area. That's one of the things I'm doing. This is another equalizer, so this is brightening up the vocals. And by the way, this is done on every song you hear on the radio. So again, my mission was to show you guys what goes on behind the scenes, because a lot of people might not know that this is what happens. So the next thing is something called a compressor. What a compressor does is think of somebody standing at that mixer right there while I'm talking. At any time I talk too low, they turn up the volume knob so I get louder. And when I get too loud, they turn me down. So that's what this is doing, and it's doing it in terms of milliseconds. So the ear has to be trained to hear air particles moving in the room within terms of milliseconds. And this took me, it's been a decade now that I've been doing this, and I'm finally starting to get it. And I can hear movements within milliseconds. So this is one of the tougher things to master, but it's so crucial. And you're doing this on every track, and you're moving air particles in terms of milliseconds in order to have that emotional impact. And that's where the mastery comes in with this, is because you have all these tools, but if you just slap them on and you don't know how to use them, then your music's not going to hit home for people. This next one is called a de-esser. This takes all of the S's of the vocals, the sibilances, and quiets them down within terms of milliseconds. So it's actually another compressor. So when you hear S's, they don't hurt your ears. Very crucial on the vocal. And then the last thing, this is my favorite part. This is called reverb, delay, and a doubler. So I'm going to show you with reverb and without reverb. So this absolutely makes a vocal. This gives all the vibe. And reverb, I was obsessed with it for years, and I was just trying to learn how to use it properly and how to hear all the subtle nuances, because it creates depth, and you'll see as soon as I play this.
Your heart is watching me come alive and hold me, tether me, and a smile is shaping up next to me, honestly, cautiously wanna be loved.
Much better, right? Yeah, so you're creating vibe with that, and we're doing that with each instrument in different ways, and we're moving it closer to the listener, further back. So I'm putting reverb on the vocals. It's making this space. Nick is a singer. It puts Nick in a hall type space, and it sounds like you're watching somebody sing on stage, maybe at the Center of the Arts or whatever, and the beautiful reverb and reflections are coming off, and it just sounds like you're somewhere else. You're able to transport the listener. Yes, so that's the 4 S's. So we have symmetry, we have substance, we have sonics, and we have synergy. So, I'm showing all these crazy things and all these crazy tools. I just want to reiterate my point from the beginning is, I thought that knowing how to use all of these tools was going to make me successful with music, or make me make songs that were absolutely incredible, but they don't mean anything unless where the song is coming from really matters, because people connect to that. People can listen to a guy in his bathroom singing on YouTube with his acoustic guitar, and it's the simplest thing, but they really connect to it. And that's what we are as human beings. We want that. We want to connect to things. So I like to think about a bird, so I'm going to give you an analogy to finish this off. When a bird chirps, it's not trying to impress you, it's annoying you, but a bird chirps and it's not trying to impress other birds. You know, it's not trying to sing a song perfectly in pitch for what others think. It simply is a beautiful creature, and it creates beautiful sound because of what it is. So I want you to ask yourselves, what is your unintentional beauty? What do you do that you don't have to think about, where that emotion where others can connect with comes from? So when you leave today, I want you to think about what that unintentional beauty is, and just know that even though there's all this technical stuff, it doesn't mean anything unless you have that true emotional substance. Thank you.